Hey guys, Chris Fix here today. I'm going to show you how to use a fuel pressure tester to check the fuel pressure of your vehicle. In this case, we'll be looking at a 96 Corvette, but this will apply with pretty much any vehicle. And the reason why you would test your fuel pressure is because your car is running weird, it's not starting right. You need three main things to get a car to run, and it's air, fuel, and spark. So we're going to look at the fuel part of this, and I'm going to show you how to use the fuel pressure tester to diagnose your fuel system. So this is the basic idea of a fuel system on most cars. You have your fuel tank with a fuel pump. In this case, the Vette has the fuel pump inside the fuel tank. Some cars have it on the outside. The fuel line down here has a fuel filter. It goes up, goes into the fuel rail, then goes into the injectors, and then it comes back around. And because your pump is always on, you need to have a return line. The return line goes back into the tank. So the whole point of the fuel system is to maintain a constant pressure. Your fuel injectors work as specific pressure. If that pressure goes up or down, then you won't get a good spray pattern, or your engine might not run, whatever the case may be. In this case, I want about 40 psi. I don't want to go below that, and I don't want to go above that. There's a little bit of wiggle room in there, so it could be 35 to 45 in there, and you're fine. But if it goes above 60, then you have a problem. If it goes below 30, then you have a problem. We're going to test this under the engine load with the engine running, as well as with the engine off. We're also going to do a leak down test. All these tests will give you a really good idea of how your fuel system is and what might not be working. So the first thing we're going to do is make sure the fuel pump is actually priming and working. If you're not getting fuel to your fuel injectors, or you're not getting pressure, then this is the first step. So what you do is you put your key in the ignition and you turn it to the run position. So when you put it to the run position, you're going to hear the fuel pump. It should be behind you or under you. So I'm gonna put this camera next to the fuel pump so you can hear it. I'm gonna do it again. So again, all you do is turn to the run position and listen to this noise. If you hear that noise, it means that there's power getting to the fuel pump, which is a good first step. So now we're gonna use the fuel pressure gauge to see what type of fuel pressure we're getting at the fuel rail. So the first thing you want to do is locate where your fuel lines come in, and you can see these two fuel lines coming in and going in over here. Now I'm gonna have to remove these covers, which are easy. They pop in. Your car might be a little bit different, but not a big deal. And you can see here's the fuel rail, here's the fuel injectors, here's the fuel pressure regulator, and those are the main parts of this system up here. So, and then you want to look for the Schrader valve. The Schrader valve is right here. This lets you connect your fuel pressure tester, or your fuel pressure gauge, whatever you like to call it. The connection looks like this. So now I'm going to connect my fuel pressure gauge and see what kind of fuel pressure we're getting. So now we're going to take our fuel pressure gauge and we're going to connect it to the Schrader valve right here. And it's just a simple connection. You put this on and twist right on. You just want to make sure it goes on straight. Okay, now that it's on all the way, we're going to go check the fuel pressure. One thing I forgot to tell you is that this is a pressure valve. This relieves the pressure of your fuel system when you have it attached. Right now there's no pressure, and it'll just go out of this hose. Now, the cool thing about this is it's a rubberized gauge, so I could put that in there and I could look at it in the car. So now all I'm going to do is turn the car to the run position. I'm not going to start it, the position where you hear the fuel pump prime. And here's what it's going to look like. So remember, we want it to go to about 40 psi, 45 psi in there. Beautiful. So now we're going to wait and watch it for a good minute, 2 minutes, and we want to make sure this doesn't drop off. We want the pressure to be maintained. If the pressure isn't maintained, it could be a few things. One thing it could be is the fuel pressure regulator. We'll check that. Another thing it could be is your fuel injectors. Another thing it could be is the fuel pump itself, the check valve in there. Okay, this is about 10 minutes later, and you can see the fuel pressure hasn't dropped. Now, if you want to do a longer leak down test, it should drop maybe 10 psi in an hour. But right now, we know there's not a major problem, because fuel pressure isn't leaking out quickly. For most of your major problems, you're going to notice fuel pressure leaking out within 2 minutes. So right now, my PSI is good. It's going up to the correct operating pressure. What we're going to do is check the fuel pressure regulator. So now the fuel pressure regulator is on the last fuel rail before it goes back into the gas tank. And what this does, it uses engine vacuum to pull a diaphragm in here and regulate the fuel pressure. When there is a stronger vacuum, that means you're accelerating, it's going to close this diaphragm and create higher fuel pressure. And when you're just idling, there's not going to be as much vacuum, so it's going to allow the fuel to go through and maintain that 40 psi pressure. So what you want to do is, most fuel pressure regulators have a vacuum line, and you want to smell in the vacuum line for gasoline and also look for any dripping of gasoline. Any signs of gasoline mean that the regulator is leaking. So there's no smell in mine, there's no dripping, and I'm going to show you one more thing to do, and that's going to require having the engine on. So now I'm going to go start the engine, and we're going to watch this. Okay, good. So like I said, it's right around 40, give or take 5 psi. So now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the vacuum line off the fuel pressure regulator, and you can hear the suction. That's good, that means there's suction, and there should be nothing coming out of here. And I'm going to check the fuel pressure. I'm going to actually have somebody do this so you could see it instantly. When I say somebody's going to help me out and pull off that vacuum line I showed you, and you're going to see the fuel pressure should jump up. Go ahead. You see that fuel pressure? It jumped right up? Good, that means the diaphragm in there is working properly. Close it, put it back on. Good, now that vacuum line's back on. So that's a good way to check your diaphragm. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to rev up the engine. So I'm going to rev it up to about 2,000–3,000 RPMs, which is a decent amount for this V8. Constant rev. And you can see that fuel pressure is maintained pretty good. So now I'm going to do a quick rev. And you can see that fuel pressure stays pretty good. It's not going into the danger zones below 30 or above 60. And then right after I let off the gas, it goes right back. So if it ends up not being the fuel pressure regulator, then it could be fuel injectors. So there's an O-ring around the injectors that could become damaged or just old and rotted, and that allows fuel to go past the injectors without the injectors on, and that would cause a fuel pressure leak. So if the car is off but it has about 40 psi of fuel pressure and you let it sit and it leaks down, it could be the fuel injectors because of that O-ring. But it could also be the fuel pump, which is in the back of the car. So the fuel pump has a valve in it. So when the pump is on, the valve is up. Once the pump shuts, it goes down, so it prevents fuel from backflowing. And if that is broken, once you shut the car off, the fuel pressure will rapidly drop. And it won't leak out slow, it'll leak out fast. Whereas injectors, normally they'll leak out slow. So if you have a fast leak of fuel pressure, then it's most likely the fuel pump. If you have a slow leak of fuel pressure, it's more likely the fuel injectors. That's assuming that you checked out your fuel pressure regulator. If this video was helpful, give it a thumbs up. That helps me out a lot. And if you like these how-to videos, subscribe. I put out how-to videos almost weekly that show you how to fix your car, and they're very helpful and help you save money. Also, you can follow me on Twitter or follow me on Facebook. Those links will be in the description below. I'll put up some videos. You guys could click on those if you want. How to change the fuel pressure regulator. It's actually a pretty easy job if yours is broken. And if you can't click on the screen, then you could click in the description below. I'll have the links.